Hi there, I'm Dr. Lisa Peavy. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an osteopathic family medicine physician, and recently I've been putting together a bunch of videos, really trying to discern between all the information, data, and evidence that we have in terms of this illness that is wreaking havoc on our world. The mandated therapy that has now been mandated for healthcare workers and others all over the country, all over places across the world, I'm sure. And what is it showing? Because really my biggest concern is that the numbers of injuries that we're having to this mandated experimental, let's be real clear on that, regardless of whether or not it's been approved, it is still experimental. The study completions are not set to finish yet. Okay, so when everyone says that they're following the science, in reality, that is not the case, because the science hasn't been completed yet. And the data that we're hoping they would follow the science on, which honestly, the only long-term data that we were collecting would be the reporting systems, right? I mean, that system that's been reporting, now the argument against it is that just because it's been reported does not mean that it actually caused that problem, right? Correlation doesn't mean causation, essentially. Well, when we don't have really any other data to support what's going to happen long term, that is the only system we have that we should be looking at and we should be taking very seriously. But they're not. I mean, we have close to 14,000 reported deaths now in the U.S. alone, and this has been since the onset of the injection itself. Almost 14,000 reported deaths, which we are pretty certain are underreported versus overreported. And in terms of its effectiveness, well, I mean, is it effective? I don't believe that the data shows it's effective at all. In fact, the director at the director at the place that starts with a C, ends with a C, and has D in the middle, said herself that the new variant is 20% different than last year's, and that's why there are so many breakthrough cases, because there's a 20% variance. So, and we know there's breakthrough cases. We've seen it. I spoke with a critical care doc, and she said that she is seeing anywhere from 30% to 60, sometimes 70% of people who have received the treatment who are now back in the hospital positive again. That's anywhere from 30 to 60, so it ranges, right? A huge range. There's a report, there was a newspaper article in USA Today. Let's see, Rebecca Walter. You can look this up. It's the title is CV-19 cases, hospital admissions climbing. And what it says is, as of August 27th, people were hospitalized. As of August 27th, 31 people were hospitalized with COVID-19 at Pardee Hospital. 6 of those individuals had been had received the treatment prior. Okay. At the same time, the week prior, the hospital had 22 CV positive patients and only all but 2 had received the treatment prior. All but 2. Only 2 of those, so 20 of those people had the injection. So it flip-flops, and that's kind of what the reports have been showing me as well. And speaking with healthcare workers, docs, nurses that work in the ICU, that's essentially what we're receiving reports on. So it honestly seems fairly equal. I'm not sure it's really showing that there's any more coverage or effectiveness in one group or the other. So the effectiveness doesn't really seem to be there as much. And we know that we have medications that we would like to use, that a lot of doctors thankfully are figuring out how to use, where to find these medications, how to talk to patients about where to get them, and how to talk about the importance of early treatment. And we talk about misinformation. There was recently a doctor in Oklahoma. Interestingly enough, I went to residency with him, and he was unethical back then as well. But he had made a recent report, basically that the news stations picked up, and he had stated that due to IVM overdoses, this medication that everyone keeps saying is harmful, which we'll talk about in just a moment, that this IVM treatment, he was seeing so many overdoses of it in his ER that they were having to send away actual sick people because they didn't have room for it, and it was picked up by news stations and kind of went viral, right? So the hospital sent out their own statement. This was the Northeastern Health System in Sequoia, Oklahoma, and they stated, although Dr. Jason McAleer is not an employee of NHS Sequoia, he is affiliated with a medical staffing group that provides coverage for our emergency room. With that said, Dr. McAleer has not worked at our Sallisaw location in over 2 months. NHS Sequoia has not treated any patients due to complications related to taking IVM. This includes not treating any patients for IVM overdose. All patients who have visited our emergency room have received medical attention as appropriate. Our hospital has not had to turn away any patients seeking emergency use. So he caused this huge big stink, went viral. All these hospitals are picking it up, and he's full of crap. He's full of crap. And the some of the reporting, news reporting stations haven't retracted it. They've just put, some of them have just put the message from the hospital system, but didn't necessarily refute it at the top, just placed it there. So some people may not see that. They'll still think that it's happening. Speaking about that medication, again, in general, we're talking about safety, right? So let's compare that to remdesivir. When we look at the reporting system, in the last 31 years, that reporting system has found 379 cases of adverse events related to IVM in the last 31 years. In the last 18 months, remdesivir, which was the medication, one of the main medications used in critical care when people got to that point when they came in with CV-19 positive infection. In the last 18 months, we've seen almost 1,500 adverse events related to that. 18 months, 1,500, 31 years, 379. And then we compare it to the mandated injection, where we have now close to 14,000 deaths, just deaths reported. Safety? Not seeing it. Okay, so both people who are have received the injection and then those who haven't received it are getting sick. Okay, the effectiveness is certainly not showing up. Additionally, when we think about the safety aspects, and this is something we don't even need data and evidence to really think about this. Everyone, this logical understanding. So I know dozens at this point, dozens and dozens of people who've been injured by this, and I have a skewed viewpoint, right? I'm a physician. I have people who are now coming to me and talking to me about their injuries. So I have more people seeking me out. I'm going to know more people. But I know dozens and dozens, okay? I know of babies who have had petechia and low platelets from breastfeeding from their mom who had just received the injection the day before. I know of kids who've had heart inflammation and problems. I know kids who are now unable to fully do their activities. They're not able to play their sports anymore. They're having to go in for monthly appointments and sometimes more often in order to make sure that the heart inflammation around their heart is either going away or that they're treating it appropriately. These kids don't know what this is going to mean for long-term issues. There's also 25 times more likely chance that a child will get myocarditis from this than an adult. Such a huge rate. So we know that injuries happen. I know a lot of people, but in almost everyone I've spoken with, particularly about this, almost every person I know knows of at least one person who's been injured, either themselves, a family member, a friend, someone like that, or knows of a person 1 degree away from someone. So no, my friend's daughter, my friend's neighbor, of at least one person. Okay, in my last 11 years since I graduated from medical school in 2010, so I was in medicine prior to that, I think I've seen 5 to 6 people ever injured from injections. These were, Gardasil, usually young girls, MMR, and they were serious injuries. I mean, disabling. One girl was bedridden for several months. Kids having to leave school. I mean, major injuries, right? Problems, long-term complications related to them. 5 or 6, that's a lot. Well, I now know dozens since it came out 9 months ago. And almost every person knows of at least one person. When we think about what that means from a world viewpoint, that is very problematic. That is a lot of people. That's a massive number of people that are injured. Think about it. I don't even need to show you where that information and data is. That just already, if we all know of at least one person or 1 degree away from one person, that's way too many people injured from this. Way too many people to make sense for the benefit of it to outweigh the potential risk. Because again, the effectiveness, as we've now discussed, does not seem to be there. All the new variants are so much different that it doesn't even work. We're essentially telling people to get last year's shot for this year's new variant that it doesn't work much against. There was a recent study out of Israel where at least 80% of their country has been forced this injection. And what they have found is that individuals who, and it was all the Pfizer injection, of course, but they found that individuals who had gotten it had a faster decrease in their antibody levels compared with patients who had had natural infection. So again, proving the point that natural immunity is way better. And of course, if you look at their numbers of breakthrough cases in a country that is 80%, the cases climbing like crazy. Iceland, same thing. 90% of their country has received this, and they're having a massive number of cases. You can easily go look that up. The information and data is all there. Same thing in Hawaii. About 70% of the state, according to what they're saying, has received it, and their numbers are massively climbing. So the breakthrough cases, the effectiveness, again, we know is not there. So we're having all these injuries. We don't really see the effectiveness, and now we're trying to tell people to go get another booster, or to get it for the first time, or are mandating it really to healthcare workers and everything else, which is just it's horrific. And you know, the way that they get their numbers is so skewed. So in order to be counted as someone who's received the therapy, you had to have had both shots at least 2 weeks away. So people who are being counted as ones who have not gotten it are those who have had at least one shot, or if they have not waited at least 2 weeks since their second shot. They're also counting people as not having been injected with this therapy, who are at least 5 or 6 months, some places 5 or 6 months out from when they received the second dose from their last one. So they're even knowing and seeing that waning effectiveness of the injection itself. What we really truly should be looking at is we should be looking at 4 different numbers. We should be looking at those who've had the natural infection, right? So how many people with the natural infection are coming into the hospital having gotten it again and needing to be hospitalized? How many of those people, right? That's the first thing. Second one, how many people have had natural infection plus the injection? How many of those people might be coming in who are sick? How many people who have just had the injection are coming in sick? And then lastly, how many people have had neither the injection nor have had the injection? How many of those people are coming in sick? Those are the numbers that we really need. That's the data that we really need to look at. We need to start comparing all that stuff so that we know specifically those who have natural immunity versus those who are getting the injection, how effective that even is. You know, those are truly where we need to be looking, and we're not doing that. There was a significant study out of China where they injected the treatment into pregnant mice, and the results in these babies were devastating. The deformities were an all-time high. It's not good. I will post, I'll put in the links below all of this, all the links to these studies. Some of them are preprints. They're not peer reviewed yet, but I personally feel like when we're again in a pandemic, we don't have the opportunity to wait for a peer reviewed. We have to be able to look at all of them and critically go through all the information and kind of figure out what is what, right? So, but I will make sure to post all of the links and pictures that I had, etc., for you to take a look at. And you know, it's really disheartening at times. When I have colleagues essentially threaten to take my license away, or threaten to turn me in or report me for disinformation. And I guess what I have to say to that is turn me in. My job as a physician is to first do no harm. That is my job. That is the oath that I took when I first walked across the stage from the very first day as a medical student. I promised to first do no harm. And what I'm seeing from these mandates and these injections is harmful, is causing harm to a lot of people. And we're mandating it as if it's the only thing that's working, when we know that there are other medications that we have data and evidence for, and studies that are being censored and suppressed. We have data that shows how effective they are, how safe they have been, and it's disheartening that in a time when we really should be looking at a whole bunch of different options, we've narrowed it down and basically said, nope, this is it. I'm in a group that I was invited to, that is scientists, a bunch of PhDs, people that work in virology, infectious disease specialists, other doctors, practitioners. They are not all of the same mindset. There are several that have had the injection themselves, but what they are all, at least what it appears that they're all in favor of, I don't want to presume that everyone, but the majority of them appear to be in favor of early treatment. They all see the benefit of early treatment, and they're all disgusted by the fact that early treatment is not allowed, and that doctors are told if they prescribe or talk about it, they will lose their jobs. There are people who speak about the fact that they are told that. They're not even allowed to discuss it. That to me that's problematic. That's very concerning. When doctors are told that they can't even have a conversation or to recommend to someone who comes into their ED who's sick and it comes up positive for it, they can't tell them to go home and take these things, or they basically tell them there's nothing. So I have a really great treatment protocol that you can, if interested, send me a message. I'm happy to send that information to you. This is for doctors from all over the world, all over, truly, that have been treating people using these protocols. They're finding what's working, and they've put together just a really awesome bunch of information depending on severity of the disease. If you just come in contact with someone, if you don't really have symptoms, if you do have symptoms, if you're having difficulties breathing, etc. And it's wonderful. So please reach out to me if you feel like you would like to have that information, and I'm happy to get it for you. The doctors are also, not just doctors, but the PhDs and scientists and other people are coming together in a collaborative way. They're bringing information and data and doing their own studies because of the ridiculous way that information has been handled. They're frustrated with the suppression of information. And they're doing it on their own, and it's amazing. They've compiled a lot of good data and continuing to follow patients as far as early treatment and protocols. So we really truly do have a lot of good evidence to support early treatment and support how much safer it is. And effectiveness, it seems very effective. The reports from everyone who's using things, it seems very, very effective. So the very last thing I just want to talk at really quick, and I apologize for all the barking. That's really annoying, but I wanted to talk out, anytime I'm having a conversation with some colleagues, instead of being able to talk at actual data and evidence, their rebuttal to me is a personal attack on me. How I choose to practice medicine, because I look at alternative therapies, outside of just traditional medicine, etc. And, that's very telling, I think, when all they can do to refute is just attack your person and your character, or basically say that they're going to turn you in, and I'm going to lose my license, for disinformation, etc. It's disappointing. I invite anyone to come. I will sit down and have any Zoom call with you. I will look at any evidence. Let's talk about the data, right? Let's talk about the actual numbers. Let's look at that, because the personal attacks are just simply that. They're just personal attacks, and that doesn't mean jack crap. That does not mean that it's better to get the injection. So we as physicians have an obligation to look at that and actually have to have collegial conversations with each other, without personally attacking the way I choose to practice medicine. So, and that is within my right to do, just like it's within your right to practice medicine the way that you choose to. I practice medicine the way I do because it's beneficial. It's way more beneficial than anything I ever saw in my 10 plus years of traditional medicine. It is by far, I'm going to say, superior. It is. Of course, there's an integration. Medicines and surgery are absolutely vital, more for the trauma emergency aspect of it. But outside of that, really, other than just few medications for some blood pressure and diabetes and things, but this massive polypharmacy that we do, and this way that we treat patients, we don't treat them to health. We basically just mask symptoms, and I choose not to practice medicine that way. I choose to get to the root cause. I choose to go deep. I choose to look I choose to look at more than just which blood pressure medicine should we use to treat your blood pressure. No, let's look at the inflammation that's underlying that. Let's look at maybe the stress. Let's look at the underlying emotional piece that's there. Those things are the reason why the blood pressure is there in the first place. By me just prescribing a medication, that's just masking it. I mean, as DOs, as osteopaths, we were taught not to mask symptoms. We were taught to look at it from a more holistic approach. So I guess you can, again, shame how I choose to practice medicine, but that doesn't prove anything. Come to me with information, data, and evidence, and let's have a conversation about that. I think that's it. I appreciate your time today. Again, I apologize for all the barking. That was really annoying. But if you have any questions, let me know. I'll send you the protocols, and I will post links to all this information. So have a wonderful day. Namaste.